right, good day everyone, and welcome to the first of our webinars on the procurement pipeline of the Caribbean Development Bank. I'm Michelle Marius, the founder of Project Calls. In this session, the procurement plans and pipeline for the following areas will be the focus: technical cooperation, governance and MSMEs, social/education, and environmental/climate change. Joining us today who will be managing the proceedings are Douglas Fraser, the head of procurement, and Joanna Pelez, procurement expert, both from the CDB, and we had them on a few months ago where they shared with us the new procurement framework for the bank. But before I hand you over to Joanna and Doug, just a few housekeeping matters. We have a really tight schedule, and so I ask that you not interrupt the presentations to ask questions. We invite you to ask your questions in the chat, and they'll be submitted to the presenters at the appropriate time. Also, just ensure that you remain muted during the presentations, please. And should we not be able to get through all of the questions in the time allotted, we will have the questions answered and will advise you at a later date. So without further ado, let me just hand you over to Doug and Joanna. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Good, good. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to Project Calls for arranging this webinar. As Michelle said, this webinar builds on an earlier webinar that we undertook in May to present the new CDB procurement framework and how to identify procurement opportunities. And for those who didn't have the opportunity to join that earlier webinar, I would encourage you to have a look at the procurement section of our website to find the relevant policies, procedures, and current opportunities. This today and next week, as has been already mentioned, we're joined by some of the bank's leading sector specialists, and they're going to be presenting to you on the bank's work in a number of specific fields and also speak to the specific opportunities within these fields. This morning, I have some colleagues with me. First up, we have Dr. Darren Newman, who's the acting division chief for our technical cooperation division, and as already been said, she will be presenting on technical assistance, governance, and SMEs. We are also joined by Dr. Martin Baptiste, who's a senior operations officer, education specialist from our social sector division, and he's going to be presenting on the education sector. And finally, we have a group from our environmental sustainability unit who'll be presenting on the environmental sector. Miss Valerie Isaacs, senior operations officer, Ms. Hopton Peterson, Operations Officer, and Ms. Kalika Mohammed, Environmental Sustainability Analyst. And I know Michelle's going to fill you in later about the other sections of the bank, which will be covered on a separate seminar. So I hope this morning's session is useful, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. We look forward to a fruitful session. Thank you. Darren, I believe you're going to kick us off.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Doug. All right. Very good morning to everyone, to Project Call subscribers, consultants, contractors, service providers from the region, and I'm suspecting maybe beyond. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to be part of this, and we're here to share information, to find out more about each other, and I hope I can help to make that happen. I'll start off by, just a moment, please. You're seeing the presentation well, right? Okay, great. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that you're seeing the slides properly.
Yes, yes, we can see them, Darren.
Great, fine. All right, so we are part of the projects department, the technical cooperation division. There's some restructuring going on, and for now we're still doing this work in this division. And just to say what our raison d'etre is and what we work towards, we aspire to lead CDB's efforts to build capacity, transfer knowledge and skills, and to help to make the bank the number one provider of technical assistance in the region. I'll talk a little bit more about technical assistance and what that involves. But CDB has been doing this for 50 years. And we are the Caribbean Development Bank. We are the one regional bank that fully understands, because we are part of the region, and we're proud to have that position. And we feel that in this work of technical cooperation within the region, we are leaders and will continue to build even stronger. I'm going to call it TCD, Technical Cooperation Division. Our primary responsibilities, well, we do coordinate the bank's policy on technical cooperation. So in a sense, we have internal clients too, which are the rest of the bank. And we also have an outward facing role, which is to engage with our borrowing member countries, which are the 19 countries. I'll call them BMCs going forward. Technical cooperation is really an instrument of development assistance. You would have heard about some of the other core products of the bank: technical assistance, loans. Well, under the technical assistance umbrella, we leverage a lot of partnerships to facilitate mainly capacity building and shifting that more towards capacity development, strengthening, which leads to sustainable results. We also manage a portfolio of technical assistance projects, and you'll hear some of those later on. And we articulate good practice in technical cooperation across the bank. The rest of the bank also does, within operations, also does technical assistance programs. And we focus, like the rest of the bank, on mobilizing resources mainly to drive forward this technical assistance agenda. What is the purpose of technical assistance? I thought we just needed to set that clear. Well, in our operations manual, our definition is the transfer and adaptation, mobilization, and utilization of services, skills, knowledge, technology to build that national capacity on a sustainable development. And it can take the shape of grants, and we want to make those much, much more strategic and be more proactive. And definitely we want the technical assistance to be demand driven. Our TA operations, I'm going to call technical assistance TA going forward, designed to help our countries in accelerating economic and social development. And of course, that would be environmental development too, planning, program development and implementation, and institutional support. And these can be at the national level, and they can also be regional capacity building. And I'll speak about some of those later on when we get into the themes. I am not going to go into much details on the specific types of technical assistance, because that's going to come out in some of my colleagues' descriptions later, things around disaster-related TA. Then you have pre-investment TA, which can be done mainly like before you enter into a major project, a capital project. And some of that will be described when we have the other presentation, I think in the next session, not today, in the next session with the Economic and Infrastructure Department. We will have investment project implementation, technical assistance, general development, technical assistance. So the technical assistance menu is very wide, it's very diverse, not always easy to manage. We have bank executed technical assistance and agency executed technical assistance, but each one of these have very clear results attached to them and indicators, and we monitor as we go along and ensure that there's evaluation, whether that is led independently or by an executing partner. The majority of projects that are managed by my division involve executing agencies, and they are mainly responsible for identifying and posting consultancy opportunities that you might be interested in. So the procurement notices are posted on their websites mainly, and including CDB's website and through project calls. We try to encourage that country-led and owned process for technical assistance, especially with the executing agencies that are involved, through the executing agencies which are involved. TCDs has different implementing partners, not a wide range because our portfolio is not extensive, but we do work with CARICOM, Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. Just to give you an example, they're leaders in developing and promoting regional quality infrastructure, and they're an intergovernmental organization, and they really look at developing regional standards and supporting the production, to facilitate the production and trade of goods and services in our CARICOM single market and economy. We also work with the Organization of American States on some of our OAS, trade-related work. We engage with implementing partners, University of the West Indies, or with the University of Wolverhampton in the UK. And definitely our critical implementing partners are our ministries and government departments, because a lot of our work is done focused through the public sector of our boundary member countries. And we do engage with consultancy firms. You'd be interested to know that. As Doug said in the beginning, our portfolio comprises a small portfolio on MSME development, and that's going to be moving over to a private sector division in the bank that's being established. We also focus on the regional integration and, regional cooperation and integration. The key part of the bank's charter is to promote economic cooperation and integration. Doug also mentioned that in the TCD, we have the governance portfolio, and I'll share a little bit more of that later on, but that focuses heavily on civil service professionalization and public policy, analysis and management, and project cycle management. And we have a body of work on public integrity, supporting accountability of the public sector. Under the MSME work, majority of it is happening on the third pillar on the right, which is MSME business support. And we do that by having packages of technical assistance to improve technical and management skills of MSME enterprises, hoping that they will improve their business performance and increase job opportunities. And we do quite a bit of that through business support organizations. Some could be the business development corporations that you see in some countries, even the Bureau of Standards. And we have individual, we also help individual MSMEs, moving away from that because it's not easy to always engage with individuals, and it's best to go through the coordinating bodies, the implementing agencies, to try and help to support them with their business development, marketing plans, management skills. There's a lot of hand-holding that happens there, and CDB has been doing that for over 30 years. In the business climate domain, we want to embark on increased work here, where we would be looking at some of the regulations and some of the things that need to happen in public sector reform to enable greater competitiveness of the private sector. And on the finance, we focus on providing financial services to local small enterprises, but doing it through the development financial institutions. That is led mainly by the private sector development unit, but we work very closely with them on that. To say a little bit more about the MSME portfolio, the one I mentioned about the business support being the main pillar, we have the Caribbean Technological Consultancy Services, CTCS we call it, and it's our main mechanism for that channeling of technical assistance, which is very demand driven to support MSMEs, mainly through the business support organizations. We do attachments, direct technical assistance workshops. There is also the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund called the CIF, which enables the region's cultural and creative industries. It's a grant funding for innovative projects in the creative industries sector. We call it we're focusing on the orange economy, and it's about mobilizing resources, supporting these actors through accelerators and data collection and building just technical capacity of creative entrepreneurs. And we are working on a COVID-19 response project to support MSMEs, which have been greatly hit by the impact of this global pandemic. That would be a grant facility. And just to give you another work, we've worked with the Caribbean Tourism Organization on a regional HRD knowledge and skills audit. So that gives you a flavor of some of our key areas of focus. Under the CTCS, we, with Doug's team, use the Register of Consultants, which is available on CDB's website. And you create a login, and this is where you can do self-registration to be considered as individuals or businesses to work on the CTCS or other CDB solicitations. You register through this. It's not a prerequisite for working with CDB as a consultant though, and it doesn't mean that you'll automatically be eligible to receive a contract or a purchase order award. We also have the CIF, I mentioned the cultural industries, that fund. We also have a database for that where you can register your interests via this link, and you can then be considered in our database for short-term consultancies or even for longer-term consultancies in a various numbers of areas like business, proposal writing. It can be in fashion, it could be in film. And then you can also subscribe to our consultants directory if you're an experienced practitioner with at least 5 years of experience in consulting. Regional cooperation and integration I mentioned as one pillar of our work, and CrossQ, as I mentioned earlier, was one of our key executing agencies, and they would post notices for procurement, and they helping us with the quality infrastructure. That's around standards, inspection, testing, you know, assisting firms to access international markets to overcome technical barriers to trade. As I mentioned before, the founding charter of the bank, I think it's Article 1, is to contribute to harmonious economic growth and development. And we'll be expanding on this work as we go forward, especially with what's happening in our tourism sector and the need for us to improve intra-regional logistics. Because I mean, we know agricultural products are going to be affected, and we need to guarantee food security going forward. Also, the bank strengthens statistical capacity for improved decision making. We work very closely with the National Statistics Offices and with the CARICOM and the OECS Commission on that kind of a work. Another part of our work under the Regional Cooperation and Integration is a large EU-funded project. The name is there, CARIC Forum EU Economic Partnership Agreement Standby Facility. CDB is managing the 8.7 million. All the countries of CARIFORUM, it's about 15 countries, along with Dominican Republic, have access to grant resources to do a number of things like projects which help them to improve customs cooperation or to access markets for goods. It could even be for implementation of legislation, and we're looking at those proposals right now. Important for me to say that the countries themselves, the ministries of trade or whatever the key focal point is through the National Authorizing Office in each country, would post those procurement notices, not CDB, but also, sorry, they would launch them, but they would also be posted on CDB's website. They will be managing the procurement of consultants who want to be considered for contracts under this facility. And lastly, as one of the pillars of work of TCD is the governance work. We are just completing a new governance framework and strategy for the bank, which should be approved this year. And at this moment, governance is done right across the board, the bank's operations, not just TCD. But in TCD, as I mentioned earlier, we do focus a lot on the public sector professionalization in some specific areas around public policy and public integrity. But so does Doug's section that does a lot of work on procurement reform. A snapshot of our programs involve an ongoing municipal finances training right now, and we're doing that with the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, which is based in Trinidad. And I'm not sure if they'll be looking for any specific consultants right now, but those were definitely posted on CDB's website. We're also hoping to continue some public expenditure scrutiny training that we started for MPs in Guyana as a pilot towards a regional program. As we go forward, we will be looking for consultants in that area as we expand that work in the region, hopefully in 2021. So our contractors, suppliers, consultants would come from these various themes, would have to bring this set of skills, specialization to the work in which we manage in our division. And I refer to some of those as I move through the preceding slides. E-government and digitalization of government governance is another area that we want to expand on going forward, and would be looking for consultants to be part of that process. We want knowledge, thought leaders, persons who have hands-on experience in that area as we build out that key area of work for the bank going forward with the borrowing member countries. Lastly, I mean, our mission definitely is to reduce poverty, to build the resilience of our region. Everything we do must contribute to continuous improvement and achieving those results. So we see any contractors as key partners in that process. We want to have a rich client experience and engagement. So anyone that's contracted to do work with us has to bring that ethos into this work. They have to have very strong sales orientation and bring a stronger input to the design of whatever we're doing. We want to increase our in-country presence, and that's very difficult now with the distance that has been forced upon us, but there are ways to leverage the technology to have that. We want to have speedier implementation and results as a bank, and of course reduce poverty and vulnerability. So I put this last slide here to say that collectively as a region, working together, we aspire towards these things to take our region through this crisis and to the next level. Thank you very much for listening. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them now.
Thank you, Darren, for that presentation.
You're welcome, Joanna.
I think we do have, and I just want to, before I open up the question session, I did share the link directly from my account with our presenters and with a couple of people. So I seem to have a few clones in the participations list. So we just have to, when our presenters are ready to speak, open your mic so that we know who is the Joanna Pelaez that will be speaking. We'll deal with this. And also we did receive a comment through our chat room that also came from one of my clones, but I think this actually came from Laura Canevari from Ithaca. And she's saying that the Register of Consultants doesn't seem to have any field for climate adaptation and climate risk management experts. We do take this point. I think there's always, we do have room to extend the profiles of the consultants to other fields that we probably haven't worked on in the past. And obviously this is an area of interest that's increasing within the bank, as Darren will have mentioned briefly. So we take note of your comment, and we will be sure to adjust that Register of Consultants to include this type of field so that you can complete your profile. But yeah, so I would like to open up the floor if we have questions from the audience to raise your hand and open your microphone. Okay, thank you, Laura. I don't seem to no, I don't see any raised hands. I don't know, Michelle, if you, oh, okay. We have a question from Christine Norton. So go ahead, Christine.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, hi. Thank you very much. That was an interesting presentation. Of course, the most important part is the comment you made about, I like very much actually the idea of in-country consultants and support implementation of projects on the ground. But at the same time, you said you might register as a consultant using our system, but there's no guarantee that we will pay attention to it. So can you just explain that a bit more, and what is it? Is the limitation in terms of consultants and that kind of thing? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Joanna if she'll help also, but just to say, thank you so much, Christine, for your comment. Really, thank you. And Laura earlier, just to say that we would have to make it very clear that it's not a prerequisite. I mean, persons will see procurement notices, they'll see calls, and they can respond without going through it. So I think I had to put that in just to be really clear. But I would probably ask procurement unit to say more on this.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to complement that answer, and maybe Doug can also jump in. So yes, the Register of Consultants, it's beneficial to you consultants because it provides us with knowledge of what the market is offering, and obviously because of our policies and procurement policies and procedures, all competitive process will have to have a formal expression of interest from consultants. But because we want to be able to expand that competition as much as possible, we will reach out to consultants that are registered on the list to make sure that they know about the opportunities that are coming up, so that they can submit a formal expressions of interest or subsequent proposals, if that's the case. So I think it gives you that step ahead of knowing the opportunities that are coming ahead, and internally and through our regional programs and with our countries, we try to share the list of consultants that are registered, that have and that are interested in the projects, so that they have hands on these opportunities ahead of time, and they're able to do that business intelligence, so that when the actual expressions of interest is issued and the opportunities are open, you're aware of that particular opportunity that's taking place. I don't know if Doug wants to jump in and complement the answer.
Yeah, I'd just say a couple of things on that, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the register, just to say that the Register of Consultants is different from the rosters that we may have. And the rosters we spoke to in the previous webinar are actually arrangements where you have a contract with the bank or a country. And under those frameworks, you can be called down for work at pre-agreed rates. The roster is not a contractual relationship. It's rather you expressing your interests and sharing your skill set. As we have discussed for those who were there last time, the last webinar, the bulk of our procurement flows through our clients, typically public agencies. And our procurement framework, if they cannot get the level of interest they need, or they want to proactively reach out to potential consultants, they can approach the bank and ask us to share details of suitable consultants. So in those instances, what we would do is we would tap the register and say, these are people who have registered. We've had a quick review. These look experienced, suitably qualified. You may wish to consider them either to supplement a procurement process where they haven't got a sufficient response, or to proactively reach out to consultants when they're advertising an opportunity. The other instance we use the register is for our own procurement. This is less, it's less in terms of the quantum of opportunities and value, but we still need consultants for our own work. whether that's preparing studies, undertaking research, or preparing for future projects. And this helps us in a similar manner identify who's in the market and who we potentially can reach out to. It is used in a more specific context for the CTCS program that Darren mentioned. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words about that, Darren.
Yes, thank you, Doug, and thanks to Joanna and Doug for expanding. Thanks for helping out. For the CTCS program, yes, we have, as I mentioned, technical assistance projects that we do with mainly the business support organizations. A proposal will come through from them asking for assistance in a particular area. It could be for, say, strengthening agro-processing of a particular entity or a particular group, or just to help the sector to improve its outreach in that area. We would then look at the design with them. Of course, once we're in the appraisal process, and then we will determine what would be the inputs that are needed. One of the first things we would try to do is to go to the roster, because within the roster of consultants, there's a CTCS, I'm not sure if I could call it a portal, but there is an area for registering interest in the CTCS specifically, and we do a search there. It helps us to generate a short list of experts with a number of years of experience and the concentration of experience in particular areas. Especially when we do not have within our own experience persons that we've worked in that area, and we can't generate a short list very quickly. We will use the roster to make sure it's a much more transparent and much more thorough process. And then we move from there to do of course, the short listing based on criteria and scoring. So I hope that's very helpful. It's a very quick way also of getting in touch with persons, with firms or individuals with specific skill sets. So we find it quite useful in that respect. We have looked at the themes, the areas of specialization. I think the last time we did it was maybe just a few years ago. I think it's time for us to probably have a look at it again. And going back to Laura's suggestion about the climate risk management as an area, I know she was speaking about the wider roster itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. We have a couple more questions, so I'm going to read them out, and you can, I think these are directed to you, and then we will move on to the next presentation after that. If anybody else has questions related to Darren's presentation and our technical assistance program overall, you can drop them on the chat, and we will be sure to address them via chat so that we can move on with the presentations. So I will read the two questions, and then we move on to the next presentation. The first one comes from Robert Reid, and it says, will the bank give consideration to unsolicited proposals geared at enhancing the capacity of government minister/permanent secretaries? For example, agriculture and MMSE, to understand the dynamics of the sector and develop appropriate policy interventions. And the second one, I think this one also came from Laura, my clone. Do you offer grants to finance project development / to design business model / support MSMEs, prepare proposals to access finance, for example, things such as adapt to climate change?
Right, thank you, Joanna. Okay, I'll take the first. Did I hear that part correctly? Because I think I had a little dip. Just the beginning of what you said, Joanna.
Yeah, it was Robert Reid about unsolicited proposals in the
right.
Yes.
Targeted at government ministries.
Correct.
The building of permanent secretaries, for instance, agriculture, MSME dynamics. I think I heard policy intervention. Okay.
Yes.
Robert, we don't have anything that's in the pipeline. Well, sorry, that's existing right now in that specific areas. One of the things I mentioned was the supporting governments in public policy analysis and management. I mentioned it a bit earlier. And that was a body of work that we did in 19 countries for the past 4 years. It finished last year, really, and that was really training in strengthening the capacity for engaging in the public policy process. We had the training in CDB also for staff. One of the major takeaways were that to change a lot of things that were constraining performance in the civil service, we would need to engage at a higher level, a lot more with the ministers, the MPs, and it's specifically around leadership development. So it's something that we've done some scoping work on. What are some of the good practices across the region and globally in terms of engaging that senior political directorate? Is not easy to build capacity amongst our regional leaders at that level. You really can't even call it capacity building in some cultures, some country contexts. So the permanent secretaries were part of that public policy training, as mentioned, but not enough of them in all the countries. And we know there's further work to be done. Those public servants came from ministries of agriculture, they came from environment, they came from all the sectors. There was a diverse representation. And as I said, going forward, we will be looking for ways to work with the same group of persons, but mainly around leadership development and change. So some of the behavioral and also some of the technical, but it's mostly a lot of the soft skills areas. You mentioned MSME dynamics. I don't have anything in the pipeline right now for engaging PSs at that level, but just if I interpret it correctly, but just to come back to the MSME pillars of work, the business climate work that we want to enhance. I mean, right now, a lot of that is happening through Compete Caribbean. That's really their raison d'etre, looking at the business climate environments and those reforms. We want to exploit that further. CDB is one of the development partners that feed into that. But we know that there's lots more work to be done in the business climate domain and specifically with governments. And that's going to require the leadership to get those changes, those reforms through. A lot of it is legislative. A lot of it is also just systems, processes, or just having some key operational plans in place. So CDB is going to be, has actually started to expand its plans in the business climate reform domain, but definitely for the coming year, we will be embarking on more of that. Montserrat is one of the countries in particular that we will be doing it, but it will be right across a number of our business, our borrowing member countries. It's important though that a lot of it is demand driven too. Yes, we know that we have these needs and a lot of scoping has been done in the region to highlight them as constraints. We have to look for the right entry points, Robert, to engage in these areas. You are, of course, we would be happy for you to submit your information if you're interested in any of these particular areas, or if you think they cut across any of these areas, please feel free to share your information, your prospectus. Thanks.
Thank you, Darren. Will you like to address the second question?
Oh yes, Laura, thank you, sorry. Right, Laura asked about the grants proposed projects development and business models, if we require experts from those to support those areas, and also specifically for adapting to climate change. I think more of that will be coming out in another presentation to follow mine. But I would say definitely under the area of the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, we do require consultants who have experience from the cultural industries sector who can develop grant proposals. It is definitely still a area of weakness in our region to get really strong grant proposals. And when you think of the creative industries, they operate in a different way, and we have been learning more about their way of working, which is probably not always to do a bulky document for a grant proposal, and also to understand our languages. So we do need persons within that sector who can prepare those kinds of grant proposals for specific areas of the arts or creative industries, and submit those that they will become attracted, and they can trigger the kind of response that they need. I wouldn't say that in any of areas of my work, though, any of them have called for those specific skills in adapting to climate change. In the MSME work, the Caribbean Technological Consultancy Services, we have been part of a process of helping MSMEs to do audits for looking at their operations, their audits around improving their resilience to what is happening around them. So that is just really what I could say within those specific topics within the areas of work that we focus on.
Thank you, Darren. So we have to move on, but if you could stay for a couple more minutes and maybe help us answer these questions through the chat.
Sure,
There is a question from Amber Macaret about the Basic Needs Trust Fund and how it fits into the Technical Cooperation Division. And also a follow-up clarification from Laura that has my name on it, on the gap in between the financing of project developments for private sector and MSMEs. And then there is a last question, and I will ask Doc to help me follow up on this question from Ravi Ram on how to apply enroll into open rosters. So maybe Doc can help me address this question via the chat. And then Darren, also when you have a chance, I'll ask Martin to open his microphone. Martin, if you
yes,
can
I'm here. I'm ready.
Great. Okay, I'll switch.
Okay, let's switch over to.
I'll switch. I'm looking for Martin.
You have to look for.
Martin.
I'm here.
I think Martin he's enrolled under.
Oh, he got it.
Oh, there
Great.
it is. Okay, great. And then, so yes, those are, so the question on BNTF, the follow-up from Laura, and then if Doug can help us address via the chat the question on how to participate on the open rosters that may become available. So
those now or put them in the chat?
Yeah, just follow up on the chat so that we can move on with Martin's presentation.
Sure, I'll do the BNTF one on the chat. Okay. Thanks to Laura for the question. All right, thank you for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you, Darren, and it's over to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really a delight to be here and to share with you a bit more than you may already know about the social sector portfolio in the CDB, although I would give you a general idea about the portfolio, but I'm going to focus somewhat on the education portfolio, which is fairly broad. The social sector division is a division that is responsible for interventions in the social sector. Our primary focus, I've listed some of the areas here. Our areas of focus include education, human resource development, agriculture, social protection, country poverty assessments, and you have heard about the Basic Needs Trust Fund, which is the bank's flagship poverty reduction program. So very briefly, I would not go into the education portfolio because there are more details on that later on. In the sector of agriculture, we do fairly considerable work across the region, working with our partners such as FAO and IECA in all areas relative to agricultural development. We assist with policy development and assist in countries with strategic planning. A lot of investments are done in terms of the infrastructure, whether it is to assist with irrigation systems, to help with making sure that that farmers are trained to properly manage their cultivation practices so that we have increased productivity, support for farmers as well in terms of access to markets. And we do a bit of work in terms of innovation where we assist our countries and our partners in areas where they are piloting interventions in agriculture, testing out new products and new agriculture practices, and supporting the whole infrastructure around the agriculture sector, which is quite important in the region. In social protection, we are advancing in that area, and increasingly so, certainly in light of COVID-19, which has at least demonstrated a need for robust social protection programs. When the pandemic hit and of course the economic activity ceased, a lot of the countries had to fall back on the social protection systems that exist, whether it is unemployment insurance. And what came out shows that we have really fragmented systems. And so one of the areas that we are going to be focusing on is social protection to see how we can support those who are vulnerable so that they can continue their movement towards livelihood. The bank is in the region, the agency through which country poverty assessments have been done and are being done, where we take time to look at what are the issues around poverty, to assess the nature of poverty, and to let that data inform how we support countries. And of course, that is ongoing across the region. And of course, you have the Basic Needs Trust Fund, which is a fully grant-funded program in the majority of our countries that focus on community-focused development. So it does a number of activities similar to what you would have in economic infrastructure. It may be the construction of roads and access roads and helping with community centers, assisting with upgrading and expanding schools, assisting with health centers and making sure that they're operational, and as well some technical assistance, as well as skills training, focusing a lot on youth and empowering women so that they're able to continue working and serving their families. And so the fund really is the means by which countries access resources to do a lot of the community-driven development that you would see from time to time. And as you go through the region, you will see different infrastructure that would be have been supported or built through the Basic Needs Trust Fund. I want to share with you a bit about the education sector portfolio, because it is, of course, the sector that has the majority of the social sector spending. So for the past 23 years, a little over $500 million US, countries have invested heavily in education, as many of us know. It is a priority in the region, and countries have use those resources to do a number of things. We focus supporting all sectors, whether it's early childhood right down to tertiary education, and of course in all areas, whether it's curriculum development or teacher training or infrastructure, the bank supports projects in that area. We do have all types of projects, capital projects, technical assistance, whether it's purely a project to assist the Ministry of Education or UWI with some specific intervention, we'd support that. Training is an area that we support through those projects. Research, of course, and knowledge products. We work with our partners in the CARICOM Secretariat, OECS Commission, and our partners to assist the region in developing knowledge products so that they can plan and manage the system a lot better. So a lot of our work in education is fairly extensive, and I will give you an illustrative sense of some of the projects that we do have later on. We address all types of needs, and I have them listed here, and this is not exhaustive. Strategic planning, teacher training, curriculum reform, TVET and skills development has emerged as an area where countries have prioritized investment over the last 5 to 7 years. Of course, a lot of the infrastructure in the region needs to be upgraded. Focus on child development, ICTs and digitization has become a major issue, especially in light of COVID. And so many countries are moving towards ensuring that they have the infrastructure for online and synchronous teaching in a way to build redundancy, so that whether it is a hurricane that for some time would affect access to facilities, or in this case, the COVID-19 pandemic, we have in fact an infrastructure where learning can continue, and that is something that they're working on. And a big emphasis on learners at risk. And certainly we all know that while we have, for the most part, expanded access to education, so we have universal primary across the region more or less, and near universal secondary, we still have early childhood and tertiary education that we do not have full access, but also within the democratized provision in primary and secondary, there are lots of students who have significant challenges, some cognitive, some educational, some psychological, and of course we need to strengthen areas to assess and to intervene at the levels. I just want to share with you some of the areas. So in basic education, we have projects in most of our countries. Suriname being the last one that came as a member of the bank and have already invested in TVET. About 7 countries have in fact TVET projects where they're trying to build out the facilities to offer what many of us would know, the Caribbean vocational qualifications. And in tertiary education, a lot of work with UWI and in some of the national tertiary level institutions, Anguilla Community College, University of Guyana, and elsewhere we are working with our countries in education. Just to share with you quickly, I just give a snapshot of some of the projects, and I've just highlighted some of the areas where procurement activities are still to be done. In Anguilla, where we're looking at the community college, of course, we assist not only with the infrastructure, but to help to upgrade the furniture and equipment, and training was also in that project. In Bahamas Technical Institute, we are in the process of assisting them to upgrade the TVET labs and energy efficiency across the campus, and some interesting work in terms of the helping them with a strategic marketing framework and assisting with improving their student services. A tracer study system, helping with campus crime prevention and campus security. Some innovative work that they're trying to do to make sure, of course, that they're able to work and provide the learning opportunities for young people in particular. In Belize, through our education sector reform program, significant investment where they're hoping to rebuild and reconstruct about 35 schools. It may be decreased to about 28 or so, but a significant amount of work there, and also some work in terms of assisting with publicizing access to education, because Belize is one of the countries where the compulsory age of education is 14, not 16, and so there's some challenge in making sure that students get a full course of primary and secondary education. In Guyana, again, this is TVET, looking at helping them with their practical technical schools to upgrade and expand those, but also to help them with training of persons to be assessors and verifiers and to have the skills to deliver quality technical education. In St. Lucia, basic education, significant investment across 12 or so schools, and also some work that we are going to do at the South Community College. And there were quite a few technical assistants in terms of curriculum reform and teacher training and helping the ministry with its planning process. In Suriname, and I'm ending with this one, again, TVET, that is lower secondary, 8 practical instruction centers, providing facilities for teachers. As many of you know, Suriname, like in Jamaica, Belize and Guyana, with the large landmass, you do need to provide facilities for teachers to be able to locate it where the teaching has to take place in remote rural areas. And of course, we also provide training for teachers and helping them in some of the areas, such as the National Qualifications Framework. So by and large, this is just a snapshot of some of the work we do in education. Like I said, it's very broad. It covers a range of areas. And while a lot of some of the technical assistance opportunities, some of them would go to public institutions such as universities, we do rely on a lot of private sector professionals to assist with a lot of the consultancies that we have, whether it is helping with a strategic plan, assisting with quality assurance mechanisms, monitoring evaluation systems, even some of the training elements as well. We do anticipate our private sector partners to come in and to support with that. So in a sense, this is what we are doing in the social sector. And as I mentioned, and as you would have heard through Doug's presentation and Darren's that has gone before, the opportunities are advertised on our website. And so once you go there, you will see the different services or the requests for bids that we would ask as we try to build out in agriculture, in social protection, through the BNTF, and of course, in the education sector. So I'm going to end there for now. Thanks again.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for sharing some of those specific projects. We have a few minutes to take a couple questions, so I'll check the chat or for any hands that might be raised. We do have a question that I think it's more general from Christine. So maybe Christine, we can address it at the end of the presentation. Do we have any questions from Martin? Not sure, Michelle, maybe you have gotten them through private chat.
I haven't seen any questions as yet. So perhaps if you wish, Joanna, we can move on. And if anyone has questions for Martin, we can take them towards the end.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone.
No problem. Thank you, Martin, very much. Oh, okay. She says that the question that she made, it's directed to Martin. So Martin, I hope you're still with us.
Yeah, yes, I'm here. Of
Question.
course, I'm here, yeah.
Okay, so the question, let me see. Question on creating the conditions for development, particularly at community level. In my view, based on what I see, there is a gap between infrastructure projects and content projects. What's missing is investment in the conditions of the environment, developing a readiness in the physical environment, placemaking, etc., that acts as the glue. Okay, yeah, I did miss that as part of on the education context. Where would that fall in your funding? And is it understood as an important part of advancing development? So the gap between infrastructure and the content of the projects.
Well, it's a good observation, although when projects are designed, you would typically have an appraisal and preparation process that would look at the full context and to determine whether the intervention that is being proposed is a priority. It is justified based on what the evidence on the ground shows in terms of its viability, its strategic importance, and its feasibility, and linked also to what the needs are in the community or in terms of the beneficiaries. Because of course, as you know, funding is resources are scarce, so you really want to make sure that when you're making an investment, you're focusing on priorities and you're addressing a development deficit that is really critical. So the observation is right, and I think what this means is that just the need to make sure that as we design and engage our stakeholders in the countries and across the region, that we do target interventions in areas that are most critical, and to use the environmental scan to make sure that the investment that the country is making using CDB funds, that those investments are predicated on a very systematic approach and a strategic approach in terms of how you're building out the development assistance that you're receiving in the specific country or in the community where in fact that investment is being made. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you, Martin.
And I see a question here about e-learning.
Yes, I was going to address
Yeah.
that next. I think it's a timely question as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, truth is a lot of countries are in fact, they have in fact pivot to the mainstreaming e-learning as part of the infrastructure to make sure that not only we have learning continuity, but I think to make sure that learning is done in a cost-effective way. And so over the medium term, certainly the next 5 to 7 years, countries are going to make some fairly sizable investment in terms of the e-learning infrastructure. It's multifaceted because this is not just about providing devices so students can have access to an online learning management system, but it has to do with the stability of internet access, the cost of accessing the internet, and so, but also the viability of the learning management systems themselves, and critically has to do with how do we ensure that the teaching fraternity, our teachers are competent to deliver online learning. So it's a really new way of rather than the site-based and face-to-face, we now have to have teachers and who are able to work in both environments. So that's going to be an area that persons are going to be seeking assistance, technical assistance, helping with learning management systems. So if you are any one of you who has expertise in those areas, do look out for opportunities where countries will be asking for support in building out their e-learning platforms across the region.
correct. Definitely something. Yeah, opportunities to look ahead of that as the countries prepare to go into this next second phase of the of life as life continues, right? And school comes back on after a long deserved summer break. See, we have a couple more questions on the chat. I think, I'm not sure we have the right people here to help us answer this question, but maybe Doug, you can help me generally answer the question from Willie Marcelo Maurer. He says, the Caribbean Development Bank is financing investigation and technology transfer on COVID-19. Can we participate as university, or does it have to be over the government? I'm coming from the Dominican Republic.
So the challenge on our regular financing, of course, is that the Dominican Republic is not a member of the bank. We have some specific programs, such as the EU facility that Darren described earlier, to facilitate trade, that is open to the Dominican Republic. But by and large, the programs and projects would not be open for financing for the DR. And Martin may want to add, but certainly in terms of the use of technology, I think he's already touched on this actually. The use of technology being embedded in learning programs is something that CDB is already involved heavily with, and is looking to do more in the future. But the big challenge there would of course be our ability to provide financing to the DR.
Correct. Yeah, and it will be really technology in the context of education mainly. I think government technology will be, I guess, also an interest that will have to come from governments in the future, and we see they're trying to move more towards that digitalization. But yeah, I think the main focus right now is on closing that technology gap in education. Definitely other areas of digitalization to look at in the future. There is also, okay, we have a general question, and Doug, since I have you there, maybe you can also help me answer this one. Does the bank require consultants as individuals or business enterprises? The social sector programs, education in particular, are along the lines of my certified expertise. However, I'm loosely involved in culture, which could add to the dimension that was referred to as necessary in an earlier presentation. It is thus possible to learn on the expertise of my informal associations.
So, sorry, I missed the start of the question, the first
Sorry.
couple of.
Does the bank require consultants as individuals or as business enterprises?
Oh, okay. That's the critical bit, I think.
Yes.
So just to say, our interventions, whether it's by the bank or executed by the countries, may require individuals or firms. It depends on really the context, and each project will need to ascertain whether the task or activities in question best fit with an individual, or if they are a wider and they involve more technical backstopping admin support, which is more appropriate to a organization, then it may be that a firm or an organization is required. But the adverts that you will see on the website will clearly state whether it is an individual or an organization being sought.
Thank you, Doug. And Ava, we do take your point on that these areas beyond, you know, the basics of what we know as working on the education sector, things like such as culture are becoming more and more relevant. And like Doug said, the requirement for those specific qualifications will be embedded in the request for expressions of interest that for that particular assignment, and definitely being considered. There is a follow-up question from Heather Barker. A lot of opportunities are now being made available for individual consultants as opposed to company or firms. However, when one goes through the
terms of
report,
reference.
Yeah, the terms of references, it's clear that the work cannot be completed by an individual consultant. Will you advise us to the reason for contracts and projects increasingly being targeted towards individuals and not companies? Is it because the process to contract individuals is more expedient for individuals than companies? Doug, do you want to address it? I think it's, yeah, you will have made already some points to answer the question, but really on the determination of whether there is a need for firms or individuals. How will countries address this?
Well, it's a good question. And you may be right. It may be because the process is a bit lighter from a procurement contracting perspective, that some countries are seeking to contract individuals when really it'd be more appropriate to contract firms. I mean, really, this is something we should be on our side as well. We should, and the country side, we should be looking at in the project design phase, as to, based on the scope of services, what is more appropriate. All I would say is, if you see things out there that don't look right to you, it doesn't look realistic for a firm, don't be shy about raising your concerns with the agency in question. And if you don't get a suitable response, let us know as well. Because yes, we want the right fit. We don't want a situation where an individual is contracted and then really cannot deliver. And then obviously that has negative implications for the execution of the project.
Yeah, and Doug, I may add, I know you're right. When we are in the design phase, we look at the particular assignment and say, okay, the skill set that is necessary to get this done, an individual can provide the services, or we know it has to be a multidisciplinary team. In that case, would be a firm. And so that determination is made at the preparation of the project and when we review it afterwards. And I'm sure there are instances where you realize maybe folks are being a bit too conservative in terms of the competence required. And so the advice I give is correct. But I would say if in fact a request comes up from an individual consultant, do submit an expression of interest to at least make sure that you have an opportunity to provide a service. In some cases, it may be a case where the assignment is fairly broad in terms of what is being done, but the country may be asking for someone to work with different professionals, and so that's why it might be individual, although there may be a range of different areas that the consultancy is touching on. But you're right, and as Doug said, ask a question, but do look for the opportunities, and we're always looking forward to seeing a very competent, qualified persons submit an expression of interest, so at least the country has the best chance of getting the most qualified person in our team to assist them with the work that they would like to get done.
Just sorry, Joanna, just one further comment on this. I was reflecting while listening to Martin. Just to say that although we speak to getting these arrangements right in project design, the way that our projects are structured in terms of procurement, there is nothing to stop us revising the procurement plan and the arrangement. So if we do, and our clients come to note that something is not appropriate, a change can be made, and it's not a cumbersome process.
Thank you, Doug. And I wanted to add to that yes, I think sometimes we take for granted or we don't realize the importance of having the feedback of the subject matter experts on the other side. So definitely encourage you to raise those concerns at the early stages of the processes, so that those adjustments can be made and that we learn for future similar assignments. What does the market offer? What is the more practical approach? Because it gives us that information that we might lack sometimes, because it's the consultants, the providers, suppliers, contractors that are carrying out the type of assignments at the end of the day in collaboration. So just to add to that as well. We have a couple more questions on the chat, but I also mindful of the time that we have left. We have 15 minutes left, and we still have a presentation from our environmental sustainability unit. So I want to give them just enough time for us to walk through their presentation and address a couple of questions. So I will ask Doug to help me address it, because I think they're also related to consultancies. The two questions that are left on the chat from Monica Massino and Heather Barker. And then I will welcome our colleagues from the Environmental Sustainability Unit to present. Thank you. Okay, right now we can see the presentation, but it's not on presentation mode as yet. Just
Good morning, everyone.
good morning. Is this Kalika?
Yes. Apologies.
No problem. I think you stopped sharing, so maybe try to share your screen again.
Yes.
Okay, so now I guess, yeah. All right, I think we're good to go now. Okay. Thank you, Hobson and Kalika.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much, Chair. Are you hearing?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, good. I just want to get the indication that you're all on board. Thanks very much again. And we would like to say we welcome this opportunity to share with you information about business opportunities that may arise in the environmental sustainability work of the bank. But of course, first of all, let me begin by providing a short context, because CDB is committed to environmental sustainability. But for us, environmental sustainability includes climate change and also disaster risk reduction. Let me also say that it's the bank's view that social development and inclusion are important aspects of sustainable development. So we work very closely with the social sector division, where Martin is located. So the Environmental Sustainability Unity, who are we and what do we do? Right, so we're responsible for leading the bank's environmental sustainability activities, including climate resilience and disaster risk management, as was mentioned earlier. We're also responsible for managing the bank's environmental and social safeguards. And for those who are wondering what those are, they refer to policies, standards, and operational procedures used by the bank to manage environmental and social risks that may arise in the implementation of development projects. We also provide technical support across the bank for all projects, including infrastructure projects, the private sector projects, and the non-investment projects, which you will learn some more about later. But I think the important takeaway message here, or one important takeaway message, is that borrowers are required to conduct environmental and social assessments. We can't get away from that. We're also required to undertake climate risk and vulnerability assessments of the investment projects proposed in the bank financing, in accordance, of course, with the bank's environmental and social review procedures, which relates to the social, environmental and social safeguards just mentioned. So the bank uses technical assistance as a key tool for supporting capacity building in BMCs to meet environmental and social requirements and also to enhance environmental and social opportunities. So some of the technical assistance, or for short we say TAs, cover a wide range of thematic areas. So for our unit, we have technical assistance projects from time to time relating to disaster risk reduction, climate change mitigation and adaptation at both community and national levels, land use planning, and also general areas of capacity development, institutional capacity development relating to environmental sustainability, disaster risk management, legislation and regulations, environmental, policies and strategies, and also information systems, for example, those relating to, say, geographical information systems, spatial data. CDB offers new business opportunities for firms and individual consultants from all its member countries. Infrastructure projects, along with the technical assistance projects to which we referred earlier, create the demand or the opportunities for consultancies. But I should mention here, as you see on the screen there, that the bank uses several instruments to achieve its objectives for environment, for climate change, and for disaster risk management. And some of these key instruments, some of the instruments we use include, and maybe I should say the most commonly referred to one is the environmental and social impact assessment, but we also increasingly we're also required to apply the climate risk and vulnerability assessment. There are environmental audits, environmental and social management plans, environmental and social management systems, and environmental and social management frameworks, depending on the type of project, of course, that we're involved with. And so these activities require the use of key expertise in areas such as environmental management, environmental engineering, climate science, biodiversity management, both marine and terrestrial, land use planning, water resources management, disaster risk management, among others. Now we just wanted to give you a couple examples of projects that have been approved and are being implemented, just to highlight the type of consultants that may be required or we're using. The first project here is one in Jamaica, which involves the Portmore Municipal Council. The Portmore is an area in Jamaica where the population is maybe about 200,000. And the municipal council is responsible for delivering disaster risk management services. So this project involves strengthening their capacity to be more responsive to their clients, to the communities, the many communities in Portmore. And the components involved, for example, developing a natural hazard risk profile, developing a disaster risk management plan, conducting disaster risk management training, and developing a geographical information systems hazard risk database. So here for the first 3 activities there, it was a consulting firm. It's a firm that was involved. And for the development of the hazard risk database, it was an individual consultancy. The second project is a regional one. And as you may be aware, a lot of persons may be aware that the water sector is one of the most vulnerable sectors to the impacts of climate change. And this project seeks to integrate climate resilience in the water sector of our BMCs. And 4 country case studies were, or 4 of our countries were used as case studies: Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, and St. Kitts and Nevis. And the idea being to develop tools and procedures for helping our countries, because although these countries are used as the case studies, then the outputs would be scaled up to be applied to the water sectors for all our BMCs. And to help them, of course, to integrate climate change resilience in their water sectors. So some of the expertise required here relate to water engineering, climate change science, and project development. And all of these were presented as a package: the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, the assessment of policies and strategies and legal and regulatory framework, the preparation of investment plans, and the development of water sector resilience index to basically measure the sector to determine whether, to see the extent to which it is resilient, and also to develop guidance materials. All of these are presented as one package for a consulting firm. Now on to some of the emerging business opportunities. We would like to explore some of these relating to environment, climate change, and disaster risk management. But I wish to point out here that even though we're giving you these 4 examples, these examples are projects that originate within our unit. But note that similar opportunities and many other opportunities would be available from our involvement with other departments, such as, for example, when Martin referred to his long list of schools, all these schools have to be engaged in terms of environmental and social assessment. And in our case, we deal with environmental assessment and also invariably climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So there are many opportunities across them because we work with all the divisions and units of the bank to, integrate and mainstream environment and climate change. So this project is in Dominica, this first project that we're talking about here now. And it's located in a part of Dominica known as the Kalinago territory. And it's a predominantly agricultural area. And of course, they're highly vulnerable to climate risks, many different climate risks, whether it is intense rainfall, drought, you name it. And so we are seeking here to build the resilience of this territory and the communities contained within the territory to better manage climate change and disaster risk. And some of the components, stroke activities that are involved: 1, the construction of a multipurpose shelter, training in various aspects of disaster risk management, community emergency response, initial damage assessment and disaster risk management, building maintenance, shelter management training, inclusive of gender-based violence. And these activities are packaged for a firm. Then we also have disaster risk management and climate change adaptation plans to be developed and education and outreach materials to be developed. Firm as well. Community development plans, and the participatory gender inclusive community engagement strategy. I suppose all of these would be packaged for a single firm. So you'd imagine we'd require expertise such as civil engineering, disaster risk management, climate change adaptation, building maintenance, community engagement, and possibly development studies or education and training for the engagement strategy and the community development plan. Next project, we're on to St. Lucia, and it's an agriculture project. Well, it's a climate change adaptation project applied to the agriculture sector. And again, we wish to point out that agriculture is another sector which is highly vulnerable to climate change. And this project therefore involves building resilience to climate change in that sector. And some of the components include, landslide hazard. Let me back up a little bit and say this project is located, the farmers involved in this project do their trade on very steep slopes, which are highly vulnerable to landslides. And so the project involves landslide hazard and vulnerability mapping, training of farmers, training the staff of the Department of Agriculture in climate resilient land management. It involves the development of agri-parks, 2 agri-parks, the development of agro-processing, observing international standards for food quality. So the hazard analysis and critical point certification is being sought. And also a knowledge, attitudes and practices survey and gender assessments. And finally, on-farm water harvesting systems and drip irrigation systems. So a wide range of expertise would be required for a project like this, including, landslide expertise in landslide mapping, disaster risk management, economics and finance, food safety, water engineering, and survey research. So they're listed it is a firm is identified for those last 3 slots, starting from agri parks, and for the earlier one, landslide and vulnerability mapping and staff training, individual consultants are being targeted. Then we move on to Belize, the next 2 projects. There are 2 projects remaining, which we want to highlight, but these projects are somewhat similar in that they seek to develop what is referred to as readiness for accessing climate finance from the Green Climate Fund. And the Green Climate Fund is an international organization providing climate financing to countries, both for the private and public sectors, for mitigation and adaptation activities. But to access these funds is not easy, right? Because countries or entities applying must satisfy a wide range of conditions. So we want to engage consultants to assist the countries in building the capacity to access these funds. And here for the activities, we have a communication strategy to be developed, gender-based for SMEs. And this is targeting an individual consultant. Services are needed also to assess barriers to private sector investment in low carbon and climate resilient development, targeting a firm for that. And also to develop concept notes. It's GCF concept notes. They have their criteria, and the concept notes have to be developed according to the GCF criteria. So we'd imagine we need expertise in areas of communications, marketing, environmental studies, finance, project development, and so on. And the final one is Suriname, which is strengthening national designated authority through GCF readiness and proprietary support program. Now here again, the NDAs, or the National Designated Authority, is a point of contact in a country between the Green Climate Fund, and the country. So the capacity of these authorities have to be built in order for them to better serve the needs of the clients in their countries, helping them to develop to access funding or financing from the Green Climate Fund. So some of the activities we have here is to do one is to do a GCF readiness gap assessment. Another is to develop a multi-stakeholder coordination mechanism. Yet another is to do a stakeholder engagement plan. And all of those three, we packaged for a firm, a single firm. Then there's the need to translate documents. We're talking about Suriname and, so we'd need expertise, interpretation services, in particular for Dutch. And for the final one, it would be stakeholder communication strategy.
Amazing.
Which again is communication. So this is the final one. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I also want to say that, which I didn't say at the beginning, that I have a team. We operate as a team here this morning. So we have questions for the team. The team, they can use themselves.
Yes, hi, I'm Kalika Mohammed. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Analyst here at CDB.
And somewhere out there in cyberspace, we have...
Good afternoon. This is Valerie Isaac, Senior Operations Officer in the Environmental Sustainability Unit. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Valerie. So any questions we can direct to the team?
Thank you, Hopton and team. We're all glad to know that you don't have to do all this work on your own. You have a great support team right along your side. We do have a question that came in earlier on your presentation from Paul Mitten. You mentioned an example, as an example, geospatial information systems. Are there any current projects and or consulting requirements for GIS solutions for firms, not individual consultants? Do you want to go ahead and address that one, Hopton? And if there are no specific opportunities, maybe you can speak of what is the bank's, I guess, a strategy on that particular support. And I'm also mindful that we are 5 minutes past our time, so I will encourage you. I will encourage whoever has a question to type it in the chat now. And we will wrap up after one more final question. So please go ahead, Hopton.
Thanks, John. I'm not aware of any specific projects that involved with geospatial information systems. Sometimes we, depending on the intervention, the project intervention that we have, it may require some inputs for, geospatial data, but that's how it's basically demand driven. What I know also now is that we have been in discussions internally as to how we should proceed with, developing this area of the bank. What should be the bank's role and involvement in geospatial development among our countries. Some countries are at a more advanced stage than others, but even earlier this week, there was a seminar involving CDB, in which CDB participated with some persons from the UNDP who are launching a geospatial initiative, which they would like us to be part of. So we are trying to find our way. But of course, as I said, if geospatial data is required for a particular project, then it would be funded as part of that project. It might be required for land use planning. And as I cited earlier with that project in Jamaica, in Portmore, they have developed a spatial database because it's much better, much easier for them to access data, to query data, to analyze data. So I don't know if Valerie has any other input, any additional input on this one.
No, not at the moment. However, with the Next presentation by the Economic Infrastructure Division. They may mention a couple. And Hopton, you may want to just quickly mention the LiDAR.
Yes, I thought about that. We have we have a project with the 5Cs where we are supporting the collection of spatial data using LiDAR. So those data will become available as soon as this project is completed, and they'll be owned by the countries, but housed at 5Cs, where there's capability for analyzing the data. They have very advanced technology for analyzing spatial data. So this data would become very useful, for wide-ranging applications. Particularly, our focus was on managing climate risk, managing disaster risk. So thanks, Valerie. So people can look out for those opportunities resulting from the availability of this data.
Thank you, Hopton. And Doug has just shared with us more details on the LiDAR project on the chat. If anybody's interested, they can visit the link via the chat.
Sure.
We have, I'm going to, just mindful of everybody's time, there are two more questions, but obviously, we need to make sure that that we allow time for us to discuss on this topic. So I'm going to read out the two last questions that came in via the chat, and then we'll ask Michelle to maybe pick up any other further questions and direct it to us following the webinar. So there is a question from Robert Ray. Does the bank require the consultants have a specific training in climate change adaptation systems versus experience in preparation of GCF concept notes and knowledge / involvement in climate adaptation / change projects? So whether general versus a specific questions on GCF concept notes. And then the other question is from Ruben Martorejo. On your last slide, you have shared a project in Suriname regarding Green Climate Fund. Which department / agency is leading this project in the country?
Thanks, Rona. For the first one, I'm definitely going to ask Valerie to respond to that one.
Sorry, I was just having a bit of problem with the microphone. Well, it depends on the project. So in the case where a climate vulnerability and risk assessment would be required, then of course we would expect the consultant to have some training with climate science. Where we would have a project with GCF for GCF proposals, then it would be helpful if the consultant has some experience preparing these types of projects for GCF. And of course, definitely if the consultant has experience preparing project proposals generally. Okay, so that's what I'll say in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. And you can quickly speak of the Suriname project. Yes.
For the other question, we're searching for that information and we will post it so that it becomes available. Somewhere in communication, we lost that information because we're getting the data information from many different officers. But
Thank you, Hobson. We will make sure that we get it to Ruben. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, so I just want to really thank on behalf of my team at CDB, Doug, Darren, Martin, Hopton, Kalika, and Valerie. We really want to thank you for participating of this webinar today. We hope you find the presentations interesting and that this is really the start of your involvement and really seeking further opportunities with the bank and with the projects that we finance. We do have a second webinar session coming up in the other areas of the bank, which will concentrate on renewable energy and generally our economic infrastructure sector. But I will hand it over to Michelle to close for us today and to really thank you for being here today.
Okay, so thanks again, Joanna and the team from the CDB. Thank you all for staying. We're a little bit over time. I've just put 2 questions in the chat. If we could just get some feedback before you log off. Whether or not, what you thought of today's session, and whether or not you have any suggestions for topics for future webinars. With respect to the webinar, the second part on the procurement pipeline for the CDB, the session is going to be next week, Thursday, which would be the 9th of September. Let me just double check the date, but it's definitely Thursday. A save the date went out yesterday, and I'm going to sort out the registration so that one can begin to register probably as early as this afternoon. Sorry, Thursday will be the 10th. So Thursday, the 10th of September at the same time. So it would be 11 a.m. Eastern Caribbean time, GMT -4. For those who are in Jamaica, it would be 10 a.m. For those in Belize, it would be 9 a.m. And I think that this was just an excellent set of discussions and the presentations as well. And hopefully it will help you all, at least if one, continue to get a better idea of what the CDB does, and also in your particular area of expertise, to have a better idea as to what might be coming down the pipeline, which I think becomes so important, especially when there are just so many activities that are taking our attention these days. But at least you can probably keep an eye out for things that might be coming soon. Some of them might already be projects that might already be open and are in the project of being implemented. So just thank you once again. If we can just again have your thoughts in the chat with respect to just feedback generally, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.